The U.S. Air Force is not going to announce which base gets the F-35 jets anytime soon. The Air Force was going to announce that this spring, saying which base would get the F-35s, but now that decision will be delayed until the fall. Vermont is one of 2 finalists to get the jet. The Vermont National Guard says it's because the Air Force is still working on a final environmental impact statement, and once that's complete, there needs to be another public comment period. Welcome back. We're trying to bring you the very latest on the situation unfolding in Watertown, right outside of Boston, Massachusetts this morning. Public transportation has been suspended for the moment.
Currently, police are searching for a suspect in the Boston Marathon bombings. Here's what we know. One of the marathon bombing suspects is dead, shot in a firefight with officers. Suspect number 2, the one seen here in the white hat, is still at large in the Boston suburb, where explosions and gunfire have been heard since about 1:30 this morning. We are monitoring this situation. A lot happening rapidly. We'll bring you the updates as they come in. Now we're going to bring you some Vermont news right now. Should Vermont companies be forced to offer sick days at work? It's a debate right now in Montpelier.
Deanna LeBlanc tells us why some people do not think it's a good idea.
We start with breaking news this morning outside of Boston. One of the suspects in the Boston Marathon bombings is dead, and a massive manhunt is now underway for the second suspect in the Boston suburb of Watertown.
Police are asking people there to stay in their homes as they try to find the suspect, known as suspect number 2. He's the one seen wearing a white hat on the day of the bombings. One suspect was shot and killed during a firefight with police officers. An MBTA officer was also shot and is currently in critical condition. During the firefight, police say explosives were used by the suspects. The bomb squad is on the scene.
To quickly recap, here's what we know in terms of the timeline. Police say this all started around 10:30 last night. This is a photo, the latest photo we have of the suspect number 2, the white hat photo. White hat suspect, this is him last night in the hoodie sweatshirt. Latest photo we have, that was from a 7-Eleven around 10:30 last night. After that, an MIT police officer was killed. Police say the suspects then carjacked a Mercedes-Benz with a person inside. A car chase led to Watertown, where that firefight and explosions all happened.
The police are urging residents in Watertown, Alston, and Brighton, Belmont, Waltham, Cambridge, stay inside, lock your doors as they try to find this second suspect. They've also asked businesses in those areas not to open. Public transit has been suspended this morning. Again, the person known as suspect number 1 in the Boston Marathon bombings is dead. Number 2 on the loose. Police are trying to find him now in the Boston suburb of Watertown and beyond. They will talk more about who those suspects are at a later time when the situation is a little bit quieter. Turning now to Vermont news. Do all Vermont workers deserve to be paid sick leave from work? That's up for debate in Montpelier. Dozens turned out for a hearing on a bill to require employees to offer their sick days. Some businesses say the cost is just too great, but others support the idea, saying it levels the playing field for all companies. Restaurant owner Wes Hamilton says he would have to raise prices to afford giving workers paid sick time. But with the statewide requirement, he knows his competitors would be doing the same thing.
So when treating my staff fairly and providing them with a dignified set of wages and benefits is something that I have to consider in light of what my competitors are charging to customers, it creates a downward pressure on the benefits that I may be able or willing to offer.
Leave it up to the employers. Don't try to implement a one-size-fits-all policy for a unique workforce in Vermont.
Employees would accumulate sick days by hours that were worked, and there is another committee hearing on that next week. Good news, bicyclists. You can cross the Lake Champlain this summer. The popular Island Line Trail and bike ferry service will fully open again this summer. That crossing's been shut down for the last 2 years following massive spring flooding in 2011. $1.5 million was raised to repair the trail and relaunch the ferry. It's set to resume on June 14th. On the Channel 3 News this morning, the latest on road flooding in Essex after rains pound the region.
Also an update from Underhill and Jericho on evacuations from the flooding.
plus some big improvements for a mountain museum.
From WCAX, Vermont's most trusted news source, this is the Channel 3 News.
Good morning. It's 5 o'clock. I'm Steve Botari.
I'm Molly Smith.
And I'm Gary Sadowski.
And
the weather.
Not so beautiful.
Not so beautiful. What bad news do you want to hear first? What happened or what's going to happen?
Let's start with what happened, I guess.
So let's take a look and see what's going on right now. 53, our current temperature, and we've got the rain still coming on down.
Another round of storms packed a punch on Thursday, washing out roads and knocking out power.
Places like Underhill, Jericho, Cambridge, and Essex were hit the hardest. Many needed help getting out of their flooded homes. Others needed help just getting home. Over the river and through the woods isn't just the way to Grandma's house. It's the way a lot of people are having to travel just to make it to their front door. Dormant brooks and sleepy streams turned into rushing waterways as a result of these overnight thunderstorms.
So just stay in the house because it's dangerous down here, okay?
Mark DeGangi made it home from a business trip in Albany, only to be stopped at the base of his driveway. It was completely washed away. He says 3 culverts gave out.
It was just such a volume of water they couldn't handle it. We've had hard rains before. The water can push pretty hard here.
Fire crews came by to help him across. They expect it will be an easy fix once the water levels drop. DeGangi admits he didn't plan for this mess, but luckily the fire department is always prepared.
What a great town we live in.
His family was happy to see him home. Across town, others were not able to make it quite as far.
It seemed like a thunderstorm just kind of got stuck here for about an hour or so, and it rained really, really hard. We just watched the creek come up.
Water washed over Osgood Hill Road, and the speed and strength of that water was too strong to drive through. One car got stuck and could not back out.
Like it was getting kind of a touchy situation. So.
Todd Hobson said they couldn't wait for emergency responders, so they took action into their own hands.
We set up a rope tied to his truck, and one guy went out with a life vest and a helmet on, one of the young kids, and he walked out to the car, and we set the rope up, and 5 people came out, including, I think, an 84-year-old grandfather.
Fire crews say there are partial washouts in the Essex area, and they expect as the water goes down and the sun comes up, they'll get a better understanding of the extent of the damage.
When they get up and think that they're going to go to work and school, they're going to be surprised to know that the roads are closed. So that's going to take some extra time for folks. Some people won't be able to get out unless it's on foot.
A summer-like storm to kick off the unofficial start of the season. The Red Cross does have a shelter at Browns River Middle School in Jericho on standby. State emergency management officials say if you need housing help, please call 211. Flash floods also left roads in our region closed this morning. Washouts forced emergency crews to close several roads in Essex, Jericho, and Underhill, including Route 15. Ken Morris's backyard in Underhill suddenly had a river running through it, and heavy rain is pooling on Route 78 in Swanton. They sent out an ambulance off the road. No one on the ambulance was hurt, and fire crews had to evacuate 4 families in Jericho.
These people's houses were filling with water, and water was running through the house at that point, and it was flooded around them such that they could not leave on their own.
He says some others may need to be help evacuated this morning if they wake up and they find their driveways are flooded or their homes are filled with water. We have a list of those road closures on our website at WCAX.com. The Mount Washington Observatory Museum is getting an overhaul. More than 100,000 people visit that museum every year. Plans are calling to replace the existing museum with a modern, hands-on exhibit and what it takes to research at the world's worst weather. Children will be able to climb on a snowcat vehicle and use the controls to drive up the mountain on a video simulation. Another exhibit will feature the instruments used to record those famous 231-mile-per-hour wind gusts back in 1934. The price tag for this will be $825,000, and the observatory has raised all but $100,000 of that.
All right, Gary, we've been starting to see what the storms last night did. What are we looking at today?
Well, here we are talking about the world's worst weather.
Feels like it.
And here comes the holiday weekend. And
Vermont just passed a bill allowing immigrants in the country illegally to get driving privileges, and soon Connecticut may do the same. The Connecticut House approved the bill this week. It would allow undocumented immigrants to get a driver's license through the DMV after proving identity and residence with a lease agreement or a passport. They would also have to pass a state background check. But some say the proposal is flawed and would have unintended consequences. It's been a busy 24 hours for lawmakers in New Hampshire. On the plus side, senators voted to legalize marijuana. The state could soon join 18 others, states allowing seriously ill people to treat their medical conditions with marijuana. But senators voted down a 30-cent increase in the cigarette tax and a 12-cent hike in the gasoline tax.
Up next this Friday morning, we get the pulse on what's trending in WebWatch.
We'll tell you how the internet is changing your neighborhood. When you're new in town, it's always a good idea to get to know the neighbors. And now, there's an app for that.
It's called Nextdoor. It's a network for your neighborhood to keep everyone up to date with the happenings around the block. Like a specialty blog to keep everyone on the same page, whether it be a garage sale, a notice about nearby construction, even babysitter recommendations. Nextdoor has been around for about 18 months as a social network online. It's just launched as an iPhone app, and the Android version is coming soon. Creators say they expect this app will come in handy for real-time alerts, too, for things like emergency situations, even robberies.
Yeah, this is not the original intended purpose of the network, but in the wake of the Boston bombings and the Oklahoma disaster, people were using this tool to send emergency alerts, and they realized there's a need for this type of communication. So you may not have their personal number, but you can send them alert within your private community, and you can set up a network for your neighborhood or even within an apartment building.
It's a great way. I mean, there was just a gas leak in my neighborhood earlier this week, so that'd be a great way to sort of let all the neighbors know there were some evacuations. And then also things like block parties, never a good. It's always so much easier to send out these evites nowadays, but to actually keep the community digital now.
Keep the community digital, keep communication flowing. My house got broken into.
Yeah.
You know, it's just emergency, immediate response. You have to wait for the police cars or the fire truck to roll in to know something's wrong. And you may not have everybody's number. You know, not everyone has landlines anymore. Not everyone wants to get out their cell phone number.
Yeah, you're right. Times are changing.
Dozens of roads are closed this morning after a night of flash flooding.
The worst hit area right now, Chittenden County, especially Jericho, Underhill, Westford, and Essex. Melissa Howell has been surveying the flooding.
New developments in a WCAX investigation into a land deal between Governor Peter Shumlin and his neighbor. The neighbor's kids say they had no idea their father was negotiating a deal with the governor, and they say Shumlin took advantage of him. Now they plan to fight to keep the property. Jennifer Redding reports. Vermont's private sector is strengthening as the state's economy fights back from the recession.
Business reporter Gina Bullard has more on the latest regional outlook. It's time for this morning's 3-minute wrap.
Getting you up to speed every morning in just 3 minutes.
Another round of strong storms packed a punch, washing out roads and knocking out power.
In Essex, dormant brooks and sleepy streams turned into rushing waterways as the result of these overnight storms. Cars got stuck in the roads and fire crews had to help stranded drivers. Now they're waiting for the sun to rise to assess the damage. In Jericho and Underhill, firefighters say they had to evacuate 4 families.
These people's houses were filling with water, and water was running through the house at that point, and it was flooded around them such that they could not leave on their own.
That flooding also forcing road closures like on parts of Route 15. Thursday, Ken Morris's backyard in Underhill suddenly had a river running through it, and heavy rain and pooling on Route 78 in Swanton sent an ambulance off the road. No one in the ambulance was hurt. And we have a full listing of all the roads closed this morning on our website at WCAX.com.
Yeah, that's never good. 4 people in Brattleboro are behind bars this morning, charged with kidnapping and burglary. Police say just before 1 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, a group of people forced 2 women into a car at gunpoint. Police caught up to them and found the women and arrested 3 of the suspects. A 4th suspect was later arrested at an apartment where he was holed up with a baby. That child is fine.
New developments in the WCAX Channel 3 News investigation into that land deal between Governor Peter Shumlin and an East Montpelier man. Jeremy Dodge's kids say the governor took advantage of their dad, and now they plan to fight Shumlin for that property. Last November, Dodge was facing a tax sale and mounting debt, so he agreed to sell his home and 16-acre property to Shumlin for $58,000, roughly a quarter of its appraised value. Dodge's daughter now says her dad did not have the mental capacity to make that kind of deal.
There's something going on, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it, and I will get this land in the Dodge name. I will try my hardest.
Thursday, the governor released a statement saying he will allow Dodge to stay in the home past July 15th. That's when he was scheduled to have moved out. Dodge says Shumlin has not told him about any extension.
New numbers on the devastation left by that massive tornado in Moore, Oklahoma earlier this week. Officials now estimate 12,000 homes were damaged or destroyed. 24 people are dead, and property damage is expected to cost around $2 billion.
In Washington state, 3 people have been taken to the hospital after a bridge north of Seattle collapsed Thursday, dumping their cars into the water. Authorities say they believe no one was killed, but a dive team continues to search the waters there. Right now, they say they don't know why the bridge gave way.
The Boy Scouts of America is reversing a decades-long policy banning openly gay Boy Scouts. The executive committee voted Thursday to make this the change, but the organization is still banning gay adults from being leaders. The changes take effect in January of 2014.
And that is a wrap.
Sending it over to you, Gary.
It's time for this morning's 3-minute wrap.
Getting you up to speed every morning in just 3 minutes.
One of the 3 men suspected in the murder of a Northeast Kingdom grandmother was in court on child porn charges. During Richard Fletcher's trial on those charges, much of the testimony centered around the murder of Pat O'Hagan. As of now, prosecutors say the state doesn't have proof beyond a reasonable doubt to charge him or the others for the murder.
5 arrests connected to home and sugar house arsons in Topsham and Reigate. Police say on May 14th, the 5 suspects drove to a house on McDonald Road in Topsham and intentionally set it on fire. It was not occupied. Police say 3 of those suspects later drove to the Hall Road in Reigate and set fire to a sugar house. A big bust in Montgomery. Witnesses tell us the store is somehow involved. Federal agents reported Trader T&J's Country Store Wednesday and shut it down. 3 men face federal drug charges, including the store's owner, Jeffrey Donna.
The Air Force is due to unveil a key report for the F-35's future in Vermont tomorrow. The final environmental impact study will reveal if the state remains a top choice for the fighter jets. Opponents say the planes will make thousands of homes uninhabitable because of noise. Supporters say they're critical for the future of the Vermont Air Guard. Governor Shumlin says he's no longer talking publicly about that controversial land deal with his East Montpelier neighbor, at least until he negotiates a new deal. This time, he says, lawyers will be present for both sides.
A West Danville man told police he killed a woman because he thought she was the devil. Police say Rodney Hill stabbed 70-year-old Catherine Houghton to death in the lobby of the Hampton Inn in Littleton, New Hampshire in January. The 2 did not know each other. Hill is still undergoing mental evaluations.
There were 8 people in a minivan in upstate New York, and 7 of them are now dead after police say a big rigs trailer detached, crossed this 2-lane highway, and slammed into that van, ripping it apart. The driver of the tractor trailer wasn't hurt.
A letter sent to New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg has tested positive for ricin. The NYPD says 3 officers who examined the letter experienced minor symptoms from the potentially deadly poison. The threatening note reportedly references the gun law debate.
Vermont's top speller is turning heads in Washington. Today, 14-year-old Ronan Howlett of Cornwall competes in the semifinals of the Scripps National Spelling Bee against the 42 other kids left.
Oh, man. Milton 5th graders are back at the White House again. They are harvesting the fruits and vegetables of their labors. Last month, the kids helped the First Lady plant the White House garden.
An Underhill woman discovered trash-stealing culprits turned out to be a trio of bear cubs. The bears hung out in her front yard for about 3 hours. No sign of Mama Bear.
I think they might be the cutest invaders I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
That's a wrap.
Gary, over to you.
Yeah, cute, but don't approach them. Well,